The lights inside the America's Got Talent theater dimmed slowly, like a deep breath being taken by thousands of people at once. The usual buzz of excitement softened into a quiet murmur as the camera panned across the massive audience, faces filled with curiosity, anticipation, and skepticism. Another contestant, another story, or so they thought. From the side of the stage, a young Filipino boy stepped forward. He was small compared to the vastness around him. The stage looked enormous beneath his feet, glowing with soft blue lights that reflected off the polished floor. He wore a simple outfit, nothing flashy, nothing designed to impress. No glitter, no dramatic costume, just a neatly pressed shirt and pants, the kind a child might wear to school or a family gathering back home. But there was something in his eyes. Not fear, though fear would have been understandable, not excitement, though this was the biggest stage in the world. It was determination. The crowd applauded politely as his name appeared on the screen. The applause echoed, but it felt distant, almost unreal, like a sound from another world. He stood still at center stage, hands gently at his sides, shoulders straight, as if he were standing before something sacred. The judges leaned forward slightly. Simon Cowell tilted his head, eyes narrowed, not unkindly but cautiously. He had seen thousands of singers, children, prodigies, emotional stories. Most began with big smiles and popular songs, hoping to win the room in the first 10 seconds. This boy did none of that. When asked what he would sing, his voice was soft but steady. Lupang Hinirang. For a brief moment, the room didn't react. Some audience members exchanged confused glances. A national anthem? On AGT? Others leaned closer, sensing something different. Filipino audience members felt their hearts skip, a mix of pride and nervousness. This wasn't just a song, this was history, identity, a nation's soul. The orchestra went silent. No background music, no dramatic build-up, just silence. The boy closed his eyes. In that stillness, the camera zoomed in close. You could see his chest rise slowly as he took a breath. Not rushed, not shaky. It was the kind of breath someone takes before speaking from the heart. Then, the first note, pure, clear, unforced. It didn't burst into the room, it floated. The sound traveled gently, like a prayer carried on the wind, settling over the audience one seat at a time. The tone wasn't loud, but it was powerful in a way that volume could never achieve. It carried honesty, respect, reverence. The chatter stopped instantly. Phones lowered, eyes widened, breaths were held. As he sang the opening lines of Lupang Hinirang, his voice carried a depth far beyond his years. Each word was pronounced with care, as if he understood not just the lyrics but the weight behind them, the sacrifices, the struggles, the pride of a people.
The massive AGT theater, usually filled with cheers and noise, had become silent.
Simon Cowell's expression changed. The skeptical look faded. His posture shifted. He leaned back slightly, eyes fixed on the boy, lips pressed together. He wasn't judging technique anymore. He was listening. He had heard perfect voices before, but this was different. The camera cut to the audience. A woman wiped tears from her cheek without realizing it. A man nodded slowly, moved though he may not have understood the language. Filipino families in the crowd held hands tightly, some whispering the lyrics under their breath, hearts pounding with pride. Back on stage, the boy remained still. No dramatic gestures, no hand movements, no performance tricks. Just a child, standing tall, singing for something bigger than himself. As his voice rose slightly with the melody, it didn't strain, it didn't crack. Instead, it opened, like a door revealing a lifetime of emotion behind it. You could hear the echoes of his homeland in every note. Early mornings, humble homes, sacrifices made quietly, dreams carried across oceans. The judge's table was frozen. One judge blinked rapidly, clearly caught off guard. Another pressed a hand to their chest. Even the toughest critics in the room felt it, that unexplainable tightening in the throat, that sudden heaviness in the chest that signals something real is happening. This wasn't about winning a competition anymore. This was about honor. The boy reached the end of the first verse, his voice unwavering. As the final note of that opening section hung in the air, something remarkable happened. No one clapped. Not because they weren't impressed, but because no one wanted to break the moment. The silence returned, but it was different now. It wasn't empty. It was full, filled with emotion, respect, and awe. Simon Cowell swallowed hard. His eyes glistened just slightly under the stage lights. For the first time that night, he didn't look like a judge evaluating a contestant. He looked like a human being, moved, humbled, and deeply affected. And this was only the beginning. The boy did not rush. After the final note of the opening verse faded into silence, he stood perfectly still, his hands relaxed at his sides, his chin slightly lifted. The echo of his voice lingered in the massive theater, as if the walls themselves were reluctant to let it go. No applause came, only a quiet collective pause, the kind that happens when thousands of people realize they are witnessing something rare. Then he continued. As he entered the next lines of Lupang Hinirang, his voice grew warmer, fuller. Not louder but stronger. It carried confidence now, the kind that doesn't come from training alone, but from belief. Each note flowed with calm precision, like he was singing not for a competition, but for a memory etched deep in his heart. The camera cut to the judge's table. Simon Cowell sat unusually still. His hands, often clasped or tapping in impatience during auditions, were motionless. His eyes followed the boy closely, blinking less than usual. The familiar sharp edge in his expression had softened, replaced by a quiet focus. He wasn't analyzing pitch or range anymore. He was absorbing the moment. To Simon, this wasn't just a song. It was courage. The boy was standing on one of the biggest stages in the world, singing in a language many in the room didn't understand, choosing a song that carried the weight of an entire nation. That kind of choice takes bravery, especially for a child. The other judges felt it too. One leaned forward, elbows on the table, lips slightly parted. Another pressed a hand against their chest, eyes shining. They exchanged brief glances, not to speak, but to silently acknowledge what they were feeling. This is special. The audience mirrored their reactions. Row by row, faces softened. Some viewers closed their eyes, letting the melody wash over them. Others stared at the stage, unmoving, afraid that even a breath might disrupt the fragile magic unfolding before them. Filipino flags tucked into pockets, and bags emerged quietly, clutched with pride. In one corner of the crowd, an elderly man whispered, "That's our song," his voice trembling. Back on stage, the boy's voice continued to rise and fall with the anthem's natural rhythm. His pronunciation remained clear, deliberate. He didn't oversing, he didn't dramatize. He trusted the song to do what it was meant to do, and it did. The theater began to change. The massive screens behind him glowed softly, bathing the stage in warm light. The spotlight, once sharp and intimidating, now felt gentle, almost protective, like the stage itself was holding him. Simon Cowell shifted in his seat. For a brief second, his jaw tightened, and he looked down toward the desk, blinking slowly. It was subtle, so subtle most people might have missed it, but cameras didn't. They caught the moment when emotion crept in unexpectedly. Simon had built his career on critique, on being honest to the point of harshness. He had seen stories designed to manipulate emotions. But this wasn't that. There were no tears on cue, no dramatic pauses for effect, no speech about hardship, just a boy and his anthem. The music swelled slightly as the boy approached the most powerful part of the song. His shoulders lifted gently as he drew another steady breath, his eyes still closed. In that moment, he looked less like a contestant and more like a representative, standing in place of millions. The audience felt it. Some people placed their hands over their hearts instinctively. Others felt chills crawl up their arms. A few wiped tears away quietly, surprised by how deeply the performance was affecting them. The camera cut to Simon again. His eyes were glossy now. He didn't look embarrassed. He didn't hide it. He simply stared at the stage, lips pressed together, nodding almost imperceptibly, as if acknowledging something profound. This was not about talent alone. This was about respect. Respect for heritage, respect for history, respect for the courage to stand proudly and say, "This is who I am." As the boy reached the anthem's emotional peak, his voice remained steady, no cracks, no fear. The sound filled the theater, resonating in every corner, wrapping the audience in a shared experience that transcended language. When he reached the final line of this section, his voice softened again, gently lowering the volume, like laying something precious down carefully. The last note lingered, longer than expected, then it disappeared into silence. This time the silence was heavier. You could feel the emotion sitting in the room, pressing against every chest. No one moved, no one spoke. Even the judges seemed unsure of how to react, because clapping suddenly felt almost disrespectful. Simon Cowell exhaled slowly. He lifted his hand to his face briefly, brushing his fingers beneath his eye, as if to clear moisture, or perhaps to ground himself. He straightened in his chair, but his expression had changed permanently. The audience finally began to respond, not with wild cheers, but with a rising, respectful applause that grew gradually like a wave. It wasn't thunderous yet, it was earned. The boy opened his eyes. For the first time, he looked out at the crowd. What he saw was not judgment, it was connection. Faces filled with admiration, people standing slowly, others nodding, smiling through tears. The judges looking back at him, not as critics, but as witnesses to something honest and unforgettable. And Simon Cowell? He leaned forward, hands clasped, eyes still shining. At that moment it was clear this performance had reached him somewhere deep, beyond music, beyond television, beyond competition. And the biggest reaction had yet to come.